In the wild and untamed land that would one day become Texas, survival wasn't a guarantee. It was a daily battle. Vast open plains, dense thickets, and unforgiving deserts stretched as far as the eye could see. And in the early 1820s, settlers entering this rugged frontier needed more than courage. They needed protection. The story of the Texas Rangers begins not with the state of Texas, but with a colony. In 1821, Stephen F. Austin led the first Anglo-American families into Mexican-controlled Tejas, an expansive and dangerous frontier. With no professional military support and tensions rising with native tribes, Austin knew his settlers needed a special kind of force. Before we dive in, as a way of helping our community grow, like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more untold and uncovered histories. Now, let's dive in. In 1823, Austin wrote a letter authorizing the hiring of 10 men to act as rangers for the common defense. They weren't soldiers and they weren't sheriffs. They were a new breed of fighter, citizen-lawmen tasked with defending the colony from both external and internal threats. Stephen F. Austin in 1823 said, "Each man shall be armed and mounted, ready to go at a moment's notice to protect our settlements." These early rangers fought fierce battles against the Comanche, Apache, and Karankawa tribes, warriors who knew the land and used it to their advantage. Armed with muzzle-loading rifles and little training, the Rangers relied on cunning, endurance, and ruthless determination. This was no polished army. It was guerrilla warfare on horseback. And it worked. By the 1830s, the Rangers had earned a reputation as relentless protectors, equally feared and admired. But their greatest trials were still ahead. As tensions between Mexican authorities and Texan settlers grew, whispers of independence turned to cries for revolution. The Texas Revolution would prove to be a defining moment, not just for the territory, but for the Rangers themselves. During the brutal campaign against General Santa Anna's forces, the Rangers served as scouts, spies, and guerrilla fighters. Their ability to move swiftly and strike unexpectedly gave the Texan army an edge. Without the Rangers, victory at San Jacinto might have never come, said by General Sam Houston. After the legendary victory at the Battle of San Jacinto in 1836, Texas became a republic, and the Texas Rangers officially became part of its defense. But peace was fleeting. With statehood looming and borderlands still contested by Mexico, the Rangers were about to become full-time warriors of the West. The 1840s were years of bloodshed and expansion. As the Republic of Texas struggled to maintain its sovereignty, the Rangers were often the only line of defense along the frontier. One name would rise above the rest: John Coffee Hayes, known simply as Captain Jack. Under Hayes' leadership, the Rangers transformed from a loosely organized militia into a formidable paramilitary force. Hayes pioneered the use of Colt revolvers, giving his men a massive advantage in close combat. He faced death with a smile and carried six-shooters like a preacher carries scripture, contemporary account. Their victories during this time cemented their reputation as some of the most effective Indian fighters in American history, but also raised ethical questions that echo to this day. In 1845, the Republic of Texas was annexed by the United States. It became the 28th state, but joining the Union came with a heavy price. Mexico saw the annexation as a provocation and an act of war. The simmering tensions would erupt into a full-scale conflict, the Mexican-American War, or the Texas Rangers. This was a moment of reckoning. No longer fighting solely for Texan settlements, they were now enlisted as irregular troops, scouts, spies, and shock cavalry for the United States Army, and their legend only grew from there. Nicknamed Los Diablos Tejanos, the Texas Devils, by Mexican soldiers, the Rangers struck fear deep into the hearts of their enemies. In Mexican officer's report in 1847, he wrote, "They fight like demons, wild and without fear." One of their most famous campaigns occurred during General Winfield Scott's advance on Mexico City. Rangers like Samuel H. Walker and Ben McCulloch served as elite cavalry, running reconnaissance deep behind enemy lines. But their brutal tactics, especially against civilians and prisoners, brought condemnation from international observers. They fight well, but they show no mercy. British War Correspondent, 1847. The war ended with the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo in 1848. Texas's borders were secured, but the Rangers' methods left a trail of both admiration and blood. As the United States expanded westward, the Texas frontier pushed further into hostile and largely native-controlled territory. The Comanche and Kiowa tribes resisted fiercely, launching raids that swept through settlements and outposts. Enter the Texas Rangers once again, this time not as a militia, but as a semi-official state law enforcement and combat force, funded directly by the Texas legislature. In 1858, under Captain John Rip Ford, the Rangers launched a notorious campaign against the Comanche deep into Indian Territory, modern-day Oklahoma. No man must falter. We strike first, strike hard, and do not stop until the threat is ended, Captain Rip Ford said. While the campaign was militarily successful, it was also ruthlessly violent. Ford's men killed not just warriors, but non-combatants as well, fueling debate about whether the Rangers were protectors or exterminators. This dual identity, hero and villain, would haunt the Rangers for generations to come. When the Civil War broke out in 1861, Texas joined the Confederacy, and so did many of the Rangers. Some formed Confederate cavalry units, while others stayed behind to keep order in a state torn apart by conflict. But after the South's defeat, Texas, like all southern states, fell under Union control. During Reconstruction, the Texas Rangers were disbanded by the federal government. In their place came Union troops and state police, many of whom were viewed with suspicion or outright hatred by former Confederates. Crime surged. Banditry, feuds, and vigilante justice spread like wildfire. Without the Rangers, the Texas frontier teetered on lawlessness. That is, until 1874, when the Rangers were reformed by Governor Richard Koch under a new name, the Frontier Battalion. Led by Major John B. Jones, this new generation of Rangers would restore order, but not without violence and controversy. By the 1870s, Texas was rapidly changing. The frontier was shrinking. The railroad had arrived, bringing settlers, commerce, and a new kind of threat. Train robbers, bandits, gunmen, outlaws who struck with speed and disappeared into the wide-open West. The Texas Rangers now had a new enemy, not native tribes, but criminals who lived by the gun and defied the law. One of the most infamous was Sam Bass, a smooth-talking outlaw who led a gang that robbed trains and banks across the state. Bass never killed a man, but he outsmarted every sheriff from Austin to the Red River, contemporary account. But in 1878, the Rangers set a trap. Led by Captain Junius Peake, a group of Rangers confronted Bass as he rode into town. A gunfight erupted in the dusty streets. Bass was mortally wounded and died 2 days later, ending his reign. Meanwhile, the Rangers hunted down countless other outlaws, like the legendary killer John Wesley Hardin, who once claimed to have killed over 40 men. Hardin was finally captured in 1877 by Ranger John Armstrong, who tracked him all the way to Pensacola, Florida. As Texas grew more connected to the outside world, the Rangers adapted. They protected railroad crews from sabotage, quelled cattle rustling, and battled bandit gangs along the border. But their methods, still brutal and uncompromising, often blurred the lines between justice and vengeance. As the 20th century dawned, a new chapter in Ranger history was written not in the wild plains of West Texas, but along the volatile U.S.-Mexico border. The Mexican Revolution erupted in 1910, plunging Mexico into chaos. Rebel fighters, criminals, and revolutionaries crossed the Rio Grande, some seeking safety, others seeking trouble. The Texas Rangers were called to the border to restore order, but this time, the controversy was impossible to ignore. Accused of racial profiling, lynchings, and summary executions, Some ranger units became feared more than respected. They shoot first, ask later, if they ask at all. Tejano Journalist Account, 1918. One of the darkest chapters came during the Bandit Wars, a series of skirmishes along the border between 1915 and 1919. Ranger units, some deputized without proper oversight, allegedly executed hundreds of Mexican-Americans, often without trial. In 1919, the Canales investigation, named after State Representative Jose T. Canales, brought national attention to ranger misconduct. Though reforms were promised, public trust was shaken. The once mythic heroes of the West were now symbols of controversy and brutality for many. After the scandals of the 1910s and 1920s, the Texas Rangers needed to rebuild, not just their force, but their reputation. The rise of organized crime, oil booms, and the Great Depression presented new challenges. In 1935, the Texas Department of Public Safety, DPS, was created, and the Rangers became one of its divisions. This marked a turning point from frontier enforcers to modern lawmen. One of the Rangers' most dramatic 20th-century missions came in 1934, when they helped coordinate the manhunt for infamous outlaws Bonnie and Clyde. Though the final ambush was carried out by Louisiana officers, Texas Ranger Frank Hamer was instrumental in tracking the couple. He said in 1934, "They wouldn't go to trial. They wouldn't be taken alive." Throughout the 40s and 50s, the Rangers focused on major crimes, murder investigations, and public corruption. Their image slowly shifted from dusty horsemen to suit-wearing detectives, but the mystique remained. By the 1960s, the Wild West was long gone. Highways had replaced dusty trails, satellite towers dotted the landscape where campfires once glowed. But the Texas Rangers endured. No longer a loose band of frontier horsemen, they had become a highly trained unit within the Texas Department of Public Safety, armed with modern weapons, forensic science, and a new mission: solving the most serious crimes in the state. The modern Rangers took on murder cases, kidnappings, public corruption, and criminal investigations involving high-ranking officials. Their legend still loomed large, but now it was reinforced by professionalism and investigation, not just a fast draw. One of their most famous 20th-century cases came in 1960, when Ranger Manuel Lone Wolf Gonzalez was called in to investigate a wave of killings in Texarkana, dubbed the Phantom Killer Case. Although it remained unsolved, his role helped cement the Rangers' reputation as elite state investigators. He was calm, collected, and determined. Lone Wolf had a presence that made criminals nervous just by walking into a room. In the 1970s and 1980s, the Rangers focused on organized crime, political scandals, and cold cases. Their scope widened with each decade, yet they still embodied something uniquely Texan, a blend of honor, independence, and old-fashioned grit. Outside the courtroom and the crime scene, the Texas Rangers found new life on the screen. From radio dramas and early Western films to Chuck Norris's iconic Walker Texas Rangers series, the Rangers became pop culture legends, sometimes more myth than man. But the truth was always more complicated. For every tale of heroism, there were dark chapters: racial violence, lynchings, and vigilante justice. Communities, especially Black, Tejano, and Native, still wrestle with the pain left by some Ranger actions. In recent years, historians and activists have called for a deeper reckoning. In 2020, amid a national push to confront institutional racism, several monuments and exhibits related to the Rangers were re-examined. The Bullock, Texas State History Museum in Austin even temporarily removed a major Ranger exhibit following public outcry over its lack of context on the group's abuses. Historian Monica Munoz Martinez wrote, "To some, they are heroes. To others, they are a symbol of oppression. Both truths exist, and both must be told." Today, the Texas Rangers are fewer than 200 strong, an elite division tasked with major investigations across the vast state. They wear suits, not cowboy hats. They carry forensic kits, not just six-shooters. Yet their badge, shaped like a five-pointed star in a circle, still carries weight, etched with the words Texas Ranger Division. They are no longer riding against Comanches, chasing stagecoach bandits, or storming outlaw hideouts. But the shadow of that past still rides with them. They are both legend and legacy, a living symbol of Texas's complex journey through violence, justice, independence, and myth. The Texas Rangers are not just history. They are a mirror, a reflection of who we were, who we are, and who we are still becoming.